All right, let's go ahead and look at the changes I made real quick. We're going to do just a couple more finishing touches, and then we'll go ahead and export this project. So for the type, really all I did was just reorder these so that way the rental period was above the pricing. And I changed this so now this H2 has a underline, it's a little bit bigger, and it has a little bit of gap between the next paragraph. And the way I did that, if we open up this H2 paragraph style, I turned on the underlined here, and I went down to indents and spacing, and I gave it a little bit of space, about a 10-point gap between where it is and the next line. And that's about it as far as that goes. And then H2, I made it, or this is now an H3 rather, and it's a 12-point font in bold, and then the regular body copy that we made earlier is 12-point regular. So I didn't do too much there. I brought the text, the title over to the side and made it much larger, and the reason why was because once I gave all of these a little bit more spacing, I was running out of room to drop that title at the top. And what I did here with these lines was simply use the pen tool. If I hit the letter P to get my pen tool, I changed it to a very thin, just a 0.5 point stroke here. And then I made sure I was drawing with the shape of the pen tool and just click to draw that path that I had there. So that's how I made that. And then the only thing we need to do now is just kind of touch up this font or this paragraph down here so we can read it better, and then export it. And there's a lot of ways that we can do that. We could draw a rectangle behind it, so we could put a fill of white. We'll turn off the stroke, and we could just go ahead and draw a big old rectangle right behind this text, which would be fine. It would definitely make it more legible, but I'm a huge fan of doing things with a little more subtlety. So what I want to do instead is click once on this photo, and I'm going to turn on the mask layer right down. There it is. Click on the mask, and now what we're going to do is actually paint with black with a soft brush to try and hide what's behind here. Now as soon as I do that though, what's going to show up behind it is actually darker because we have this black shape behind it. So what I'm going to do is command click on the new layer icon to bring a new layer below here. I'm just going to fill it with white by hitting command delete, since my background color here is already white, so that fills this layer with white. Now I'm going to click on this mask, so that's selected. I'll hit the letter B to get my brush tool. And I'm going to jump over to my brush presets and make sure I've got a soft brush. I'll turn off my spacing here. I'll make sure the hardness is at 0, and we'll crank the size up quite a bit actually. I'll turn off my caps lock so I can actually see the size of the brush. By turning caps lock on and off, it just changes from a precise cursor to the actual shape of the brush. And then up here, I'm going to turn the opacity of this brush down quite a bit, probably down to about 25 maybe. And now again, making sure I'm painting with black on this mask so that it hides it. I'm just going to kind of subtly draw or paint with this brush until I'm happy with the results. So I'm just kind of scrubbing over this, and again the goal is just to make it so the text is legible but so the background's still kind of there. And I'm just going to bring it down here a little bit too, so there's more of a transition, and we'll kind of highlight that horizon just a little bit more here, and maybe up here just again just to try and blend all this effect together so you don't even really notice that it's going on. And there we go. Now we can read that text. Everything's looking really good. I'll go ahead and hit Command S just to save this. And now what we need to do is export this for print. So what we're going to do is go ahead and flatten everything. So the first thing I'll do is come up here to Layer, Flatten Image. And the reason why I do that is that way nothing gets bumped or moved in the printing process, and I have everything exactly where I want it. I'll go to File, Save As, and I'll come back over to my main brochure file and make sure I'm into the files sent now. This will be the final file. So I'll click in Finals, and I'll change this from Photoshop to a PDF, Photoshop PDF, and I'll go ahead and hit Save. So I don't need to preserve Photoshop editing capability since it's just a flat layer, so I'll turn that off. Everything else in here should be just fine. I'll just make sure real quick. I'll make sure my compression is no lower than 300. That looks good. And I'll hit Save PDF. And once it's done saving, we'll be able to double check our work here. But while it's thinking about it, let's come back and open up that outside file as well. So we'll come back in here. We'll open this up. We'll go to Layer, Flatten Image. And now when you do this, be very, very careful you don't accidentally save your PSD, or you would lose all of that work and you wouldn't be able to go back in and make changes. So before I do anything else, I'm going to go to Save As, not Save. And we'll save this as a PDF as well. And we'll stick it in there and we'll hit Save. Everything looks good. I'll hit Save PDF. And now you've just made your first brochure. So one other thing I want to mention here. So when we look at this, we don't see any guidelines as far as where this is going to be trimmed or folded or any of that. And that's because we built on top of the template from Print Runner. But if you're going to send this to another printer and they have no idea where these guides are, we need to help set them up for success by giving them bleed marks and trim marks, fold marks, those kinds of things. So in the next lesson, I'll show you how to create a custom file that gives a printer all of that information.